The communication chamber fell silent as Counselor Velis pressed the transmit button. His three-fingered hand trembled against the cool metal surface. Around him, the other council members of the Vellum Concord watched with expressions that mixed hope and terror. They all knew what this moment meant. They were breaking the oldest law in the Galactic Charter. "The message is away," Velis said quietly. His voice carried the weight of their civilization's desperation. Beyond the reinforced windows of the council station, space burned. The Ravager swarm had consumed another colony world just hours ago. Velis had watched the feeds until the screaming stopped. 3 billion lives gone, converted into biomass to fuel the swarm's endless hunger. It was the 14th world they had lost in 6 months. The Ravagers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever known. They were not a species. They were a plague. A hive mind that spread across the stars like cancer, consuming everything organic in its path. The Concord's fleets had tried to stop them. They had failed. Every battle ended the same way. The swarm adapted, evolved, and overwhelmed them with sheer numbers that half the Concord's territory was gone now. Millions of ships destroyed. Billions dead. And still the swarm came, unstoppable as a flood. "Do you think they will come?" asked another counselor, her voice barely a whisper. Velis looked at the star charts. Somewhere out there, beyond the quarantine zone, was a small yellow star. Around it orbited a world the galactic community had marked with every warning symbol in their database. Deathworld. Prohibited contact. Dangerous species. "They will come," Velis said, "or we will all die." Across the void, Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station picked up the signal. The facility floated in the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit, a silent sentinel watching for threats from the stars. For 200 years, it had detected nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional curious probe from distant civilizations. Today, that changed. Senior Officer Day 1 was drinking his 5th coffee of the shift when the alarm started screaming. He nearly dropped the cup. His hands flew across the console, pulling up the data stream. His eyes widened as he read the translation protocols working through the alien language. "Sir," called out his assistant, a young woman named Hannah who had joined the station only 3 months ago. "I'm getting a distress signal. It's repeating on multiple frequencies." Day 1 pulled up the message on his main screen. The translation software struggled with some of the concepts, but the meaning was clear enough. "Help, death, extinction, please. Get me a direct line to Earth Command," Day 1 ordered. Now, the message included tactical data. Day 1's stomach turned as he watched the recordings. Entire fleets being torn apart by living ships. Worlds being stripped of all organic matter in weeks. Billions of creatures dying as something vast and hungry consumed them. "They're being wiped out," Hannah whispered. She was staring at her own screen, watching the same horror. "God, there are so many of them. The Ravagers, I mean. How do you fight something like that?" Day 1 had served in Earth's military for 20 years before taking this monitoring post. He had seen combat in the resource wars, had fought in the brutal campaign to reclaim the Australian continent from the genetic plagues. He thought he understood war, but this was something else entirely. "You don't fight it," he said slowly. "You exterminate it." Within hours, the message reached the United Earth government. The council chambers in Geneva filled with representatives from every nation, every coalition, every power block on the planet. They gathered under the Great Dome and watched the alien transmission in silence. Some argued for caution. These aliens had quarantined humanity for good reasons. Earth's history was written in blood. 2 world wars. Countless regional conflicts. Environmental disasters that had killed billions. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times over. Others argued for intervention. If the Ravagers consumed the Velen Concord, they would keep spreading. Eventually, they would find Earth. Better to fight them now, far from home, than wait for them to arrive at humanity's doorstep. The debate raged for 3 days. Admiral Jiho ended it. The old man stood before the council with his dress uniform covered in medals from conflicts most people wanted to forget. He had fought in the Pacific Reclamation. He had commanded the fleet that broke the orbital blockade. He had earned every scar on his weathered face. "We are predators," Jiho said simply. "It is what we are. What we have always been. These Ravagers think they are the apex of evolution. Let us show them what 4 billion years of survival on a death world produces." The vote was called. Humanity would answer the call. Day 1 received his orders 2 weeks later. He was being pulled from the monitoring station and given command of the Rapid Response Fleet. 27 ships. Destroyers, frigates, 3 heavy cruisers, and the flagship Indomitable. Not a large force by Earth standards, but it was what could be spared without leaving Earth. Defenseless, he stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at his crew. Captain Hannah had requested a transfer to serve as his tactical officer. She stood at her station, young and eager, ready to prove herself. Around them, 200 crew members prepared the ship for departure. "Do you think we can win?" Hannah asked quietly. Day 1 studied the tactical data from the Velen Concord. The Ravagers had numbers. They had adaptation. They had momentum. But they had never faced humans before. "The Ravagers have been consuming civilized species," Day 1 said. "Species that evolved on gentle worlds. Low gravity. Stable climates. Peaceful evolution." He pulled up Earth's profile on the screen. "We evolved in hell. Every predator on our world tried to kill us. The weather tried to kill us. Diseases tried to kill us. We nearly killed ourselves. And we survived it all. He turned to face his crew. "Prepare for faster-than-light jump. All weapons hot. We're going to war." The Indomitable's engines hummed to life. Around it, the rest of the fleet powered up their systems. 27 ships against an enemy that had destroyed thousands. The odds were impossible, but humans had never cared much for odds. Day 1 gave the order. Jump. Space twisted. The fleet disappeared in flashes of light, leaving Earth behind. They were heading into the unknown, toward an enemy that had never known defeat. To save aliens who feared humanity almost as much as they feared extinction. In his quarters aboard the Indomitable. Day 1 looked at the picture of Earth one last time. Beautiful. Deadly. Home. If they failed, the Ravagers would eventually find it. And Earth would burn like all the other worlds. He would not let that happen. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing fury with them. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into hell. Alarms screamed across the Indomitable's bridge as Day 1 watched the tactical display light up with hostile contacts. Hundreds of them. The Ravager swarm had surrounded the colony world of Veshanine like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey. "Contact?" Hannah called out from her station. "I'm reading 347 Ravager bioships. They're attacking the orbital platforms." Day 1 watched the battle unfold on his screens. The Velen defenders were dying. Their ships moved slowly, carefully, following textbook defensive formations. The Ravagers tore through them like paper. "All ships, battle formation," Da 1 ordered. "Maximum combat speed. Weapons free." The Velen commander's face appeared on the communication screen. High Commander Torvin looked exhausted, his alien features tight with stress. "Human vessels, you must maintain safe distance. The Ravagers will destroy you if you approach at those speeds." Hannah checked her instruments. The human fleet was accelerating at 12 gravities. Sir, he's right. Most species can't handle more than 3 gravities without specialized equipment. We're not most species, they once said. Tell him to watch and learn. The Indomitable screamed toward the Ravager fleet at speeds that would have killed any Velen crew. The other human ships followed, spreading into attack formation. Day One felt the pressure pushing him into his chair. 12 gravities. His bones ached. His vision narrowed slightly. But he had trained for this his entire military career. Every human on every ship had. Earth's gravity was crushing by galactic standards. 1G was considered high gravity for most species. Humans had evolved to handle it from birth. Their bones were dense. Their muscles were powerful. Their hearts were strong. What killed other species was merely uncomfortable for them. Range in 30 seconds, Hana announced. Locking targets. Fire everything, Day One ordered. The Indomitable opened up with its full weapons array. Railguns hurled tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles streaked from launch tubes. Energy weapons carved through space. The other human ships followed suit, and the void lit up with violence. 3 Ravager bioships exploded in the first volley. On the Velen command ship, Torvin stared at his displays in shock. That's impossible. They're firing at ranges where accuracy should be impossible. His tactical officer's hands trembled over a console. Sir, the human ships are using predictive algorithms I've never seen before. They're accounting for relativistic effects, target evasion patterns, even quantum fluctuations in their targeting computers. And they're doing it while moving at 12 gravities, Torvin whispered. Gods help us. We asked Deathworlders for help. The Ravagers adapted quickly. They had consumed 1,000 civilizations and learned from each one. A wave of bioships peeled off from the main assault and rushed toward the human fleet. They moved with terrible purpose, living weapons designed to board and consume. Day One watched them come. Anna, ready the close defense systems. Ready, sir. Wait for it, Day One said calmly. The Ravager ships closed the distance. 2,000 kilometers. 1,000. 500. Torvin was screaming at them to retreat, to maintain safe distance. The human fleet held steady. Now, Day One said. The space around the human ships erupted with defensive fire. Point defense lasers, close-range missiles, and automated railguns created a wall of death. The Ravagers flew directly into it. Dozens of bioships disintegrated. The survivors crashed into the human vessel's dot and found something waiting for them. Lieutenant Borum led his marine squad through the breach. The Ravager boarding organisms had torn a hole in the cruiser's outer hull. They were pouring inside, living weapons with claws and acid and pure killing instinct. Borum's squad met them with fire. The corridor filled with gunfire and screams. Ravager organisms were tough, bred for combat in every environment. They could survive in hard vacuum. They could withstand radiation that would cook most organics. They were engineered killers. They had never faced human marines. Borum's suit registered the temperature at -40 degrees. The breach had vented the atmosphere. Radiation levels were spiking from the damaged hull plating. Any Velen soldier would be dead in seconds. Borum was barely sweating. Contact front. Light them up. His squad advanced through conditions that would kill most galactic species. Their armor was heavy, their weapons loud, their tactics aggressive. They didn't take cover and call for support. They charged forward, firing, forcing the Ravagers back through pure violence. One of the boarding organisms lunged at Borum. He caught it with his powered gauntlet and smashed it against the wall. Bones that could crack steel shattered. The creature's dying screech echoed through the corridor. "They're afraid," said Corporal Nari over the squad channel. "Did you hear that?" That was fear. Borum looked at the retreating Ravagers. Nari was right. The organisms were backing away, their movements hesitant. They had boarded 1,000 ships and overwhelmed every crew they encountered. But human aggression, human endurance, human refusal to die, it confused them. Push forward, Borum ordered. Show them what fear really means. The Marines advanced. Behind them, Engineer Nari worked frantically to seal the breach. She operated in hard vacuum without complaint, her suited hands moving quickly over the emergency repair systems. The Velans had sent technical specifications for their orbital platforms. She was adapting human weapons to integrate with them. "This is insane," she muttered to herself. "Their power systems are completely incompatible with our weapons. I need to build a converter from scratch in the middle of a battle with Ravagers trying to eat my face." She smiled inside her helmet. Just another Tuesday. On the Indomitable's bridge, Hana tracked the battle with growing confidence. The initial shock of combat had faded. Now she could see the patterns. The Ravagers were adaptable, but they relied on numbers and biological advantages. They expected their enemies to break under pressure. Humans didn't break. "Sir, I have an idea," she said to Day One. "Let's hear it." "The Ravagers are focusing on the Velan ships because they're the larger threat. They're ignoring our destroyers. What if we use the Indomitable as bait? Draw them in while our lighter ships flank them?" It was a dangerous plan. It meant putting the flagship directly in harm's way. Most commanders would refuse. But Day One had read Hana's file. She had graduated top of her class in tactical operations. Her simulation scores were the highest in a decade. "Do it," he said. The Indomitable broke formation and charged directly at the main Ravager cluster. Every weapon firing, engines at full burn, broadcasting on all frequencies. The massive human flagship was impossible to ignore. The Ravagers took the bait. 300 bioships swarmed toward the Indomitable. On the Velan command ship, Torvin watched in horror. "They're going to be destroyed. Those madmen are going to die." But the human destroyers were already moving. They came from above and below, from the flanks, catching the Ravager formation in a perfect crossfire. Tungsten rounds and missiles tore through the bioships. Explosions rippled across the battlefield. The Indomitable weathered the assault. Its armor was thick, designed to absorb punishment. Ravager organisms crashed against it like waves against a cliff. And still the flagship kept firing, kept fighting, kept refusing to die. "Break through!" Hana shouted. "The Ravager formation is collapsing." Day One allowed himself a thin smile. "All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to regroup." The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it ended, the space around Deshanine was littered with debris. Ravager bioships drifted dead in the void. 3 human vessels had been destroyed. The casualties were heavy, but they had won. Torvin's face appeared on the communication screen again. The Velan commander looked different now. There was awe in his expression, and something else. Fear. "You saved us," Torvin said quietly. "But I understand now why the galaxy quarantined your world. You don't fight like civilized beings. You fight like we're from a death world," Day One finished. "Because we are. And that swarm out there? They're about to learn what that means." Victory at Deshanine was just the beginning. Day One sent a message back to Earth. Simple. Direct. First battle won. Requesting reinforcements. We're not retreating. We finish what we start. The war spread across 7 star systems in 3 months. More human fleets arrived from Earth, each one bringing fresh ships and eager crews. The Velan Concord watched with mixed emotions as their saviors turned the tide against the Ravager swarm, and they watched with growing horror at how Humans waged war. General Taiyang commanded the ground forces from his mobile command center on the planet Helion 4. Outside, his armored vehicle, hell raged. The surface temperature was hot enough to melt lead. Acid rain fell from toxic clouds. The atmosphere would dissolve Velen tissue in minutes. Human soldiers fought in it without complaint. 3rd Battalion is pushing through Sector 7, reported his aide. They're meeting heavy resistance but holding formation. Taiyang studied the tactical map. The Ravagers had turned Helion 4 into a breeding ground. Billions of organisms swarmed across the planet's surface, consuming everything organic. The Velens had declared the world lost. Too hostile to fight for. Too dangerous to reclaim. Taeyang had other ideas. Tell 3rd Battalion to use the canyon network for cover, he ordered, and deploy the atmospheric drones. I want to know where every Ravager cluster is hiding. His aide hesitated. Sir, the wind speeds in those canyons exceed 200 kilometers per hour. The turbulence will be extreme. Then tell the pilots to fly better. Taiyang said calmly. The drones launched into the screaming winds. Human pilots guided them through conditions that would have torn apart Velen equipment. They mapped the Ravager positions and transmitted the data back to Taiyang's command center. Perfect, Taiyang said. Target the cluster in Sector 12 with the new weapon. Scientist Yuna had been working around the clock for weeks. Her laboratory aboard the orbital station was filled with samples of Ravager tissue, each one carefully contained and studied. She was looking for weaknesses in their biology. She had found something better. The neural disruptor is ready, she reported to Taiyang. But I need to warn you, this weapon is based on modified prion proteins. If it gets loose, it could theoretically affect any neural tissue. Will it stop the Ravagers? Taiyang asked. It will destroy their hive-mind communication. They'll lose coordination. Probably go insane. Deploy it. The weapon fell from orbit like a hammer. It struck the Ravager cluster and released its payload. Invisible proteins spread through the swarm. Within minutes, the Ravagers began tearing at themselves. Their hive-mind connection shattered. Billions of organisms lost cohesion and attacked anything that moved, including each other. Yuna watched the results from her laboratory and felt sick. She had created a weapon that caused mass suffering. But she looked at the casualty reports from the other battles. Human soldiers dying to save alien worlds. Civilians being consumed by the swarm. Sometimes survival required terrible choices. In space above Helion 4, pilot Minho was having the time of his life. His fighter screamed through a cloud of Ravager bioships, dodging and weaving with impossible precision. His kill count was up to 47. He was aiming for 50. Minho, you're too far from the formation, his squadron leader called over the radio. Fall back. Just one more, Minho said. He spotted a large Ravager command organism and locked his missiles. Got you. The organism tried to evade, but Minho had already calculated its escape vector. His missiles tracked perfectly and detonated. The Ravager exploded in a flash of organic matter. 50. Minho whooped. New personal record. Minho, there's a swarm closing on your position. Get out of there. Minho checked his scanners. 20 Ravager fighters were converging on him. His fighter was fast, but not that fast. He ran the numbers. He couldn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them, but he could do something else. Command, I'm going to try something stupid, he said. Negative. Return to formation. Minho ignored the order and dove toward the planet. The Ravagers followed. He led them down into the atmosphere, through the acid rain and toxic clouds. The Ravager bioships were designed for space combat. They struggled in the extreme conditions. Minho's fighter had been built on Earth. It could handle anything. He skimmed the surface at supersonic speeds. weaving between mountains and canyons. One by one, the Ravager fighters crashed or lost control. Minho pulled up hard, his vision graying from the G-forces, and climbed back to space. 0 Ravager fighters remained on his tail, all destroyed by the planet itself. "Scratch 20 more kills," Minho reported cheerfully. "I'm going to need a bigger scoreboard." The galactic community had sent observers to document the human war effort. Ambassador Suji guided them through the fleet, trying to explain humanity's approach to warfare. It was not going well. "Your soldiers fight in conditions that violate 14 different safety protocols," said one observer, a multi-limbed being from a high-gravity world. "Even by our standards, this is excessive." Suji led them to the medical bay where Corporal Isiel was treating wounded Marines. The combat medic worked calmly, performing surgery in a zero-gravity environment while the ship maneuvered under fire. Her patient had been exposed to hard vacuum for 3 minutes. Most species would be dead. She was saving his life. "Your people's tolerance for damage is unprecedented," the observer said. "Is it true that human soldiers have continued fighting with limbs severed?" "Yes," Suji said. "We have documented cases of soldiers fighting for several minutes after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate other species instantly." "How is that possible?" Suji pulled up Earth's evolutionary history on her datapad. "We evolved on a world where everything tried to kill us. Large predators, microscopic diseases, environmental disasters. Our bodies learned to survive extreme trauma. Our minds learned to keep functioning through pain and fear." She showed them footage of human soldiers laughing during combat, singing while under fire, celebrating after battles where they had lost half their unit. "You process death differently than we do," the observer said quietly. "This frightens us." "It should," Suji said honestly. "It frightens us too sometimes. But it's what makes us effective. You asked for Deathworlders to save you from the swarm. We are what 4 billion years of surviving against all odds produces." The Ravagers were learning to fear humanity. Their hive mind had consumed thousands of species. It understood prey. It understood competition. But it had never encountered a species that treated warfare as something between science and art. The Hive Apex, the supreme intelligence coordinating the swarm, analyzed the battle data. The humans were impossible. They fought in environments that should kill them. They used tactics that violated mathematical probability. They refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. And they were winning. For the first time in its million-year existence, the Hive Apex felt something like uncertainty. It began pulling its forces back from Concord space, consolidating its strength. The humans had pushed it from 7 systems. The losses were acceptable. The strategic situation was not. The Hive Apex made a decision. It would prepare for total war. On the Indomitable, Day 1 received the intelligence reports. The Ravagers were retreating to their core territories. Most commanders would see this as victory. Secure the recovered systems. Rebuild. Defend. Day 1 saw an opportunity. He called a meeting with his senior officers. Admiral Jiho attended via hologram from Earth. Taiyang joined from Helion 4. Yuna connected from her laboratory. Hannah stood beside Day 1 on the bridge. "The swarm is pulling back," Day 1 said. "They're consolidating around their central nesting worlds. If we let them recover, they'll adapt to our tactics and come back stronger." "What are you proposing?" Jiho asked. "We take the fight to them. We strike at their home systems. We don't stop until the swarm is extinct." Silence filled the channel. Even battle-hardened Taiyang looked shocked. "That's insane," Yuna said quietly. "We barely know where their core systems are. We'd be fighting deep in hostile territory with no support." "Yes," Day 1 agreed. "Which is exactly why they won't expect it. The swarm has spent 1 million years consuming civilized species. Species that fight defensively, rationally. We're going to be irrational, aggressive. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten a Deathworld species. Hannah checked the tactical data. We'd need massive reinforcements. Supply lines across multiple systems. Casualties would be catastrophic. Probably, Day One said. But if we don't do this, the swarm survives. And everything we fought for means nothing. Admiral Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. I'll authorize the mission. But Day One, you better come back alive. We need someone to write the history of this. The orders went out. Humanity was going on the offensive. The human armada gathered at the edge of known space. 200 ships. 50,000 soldiers. Supplies for 6 months of sustained combat. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Outside of Solar System, Admiral Kyung commanded from the dreadnought Absolute Zero. She was older than Jiho, a veteran of conflicts that predated the space age. Some said she was too old for combat command. She proved them wrong every day. All ships report ready. Her tactical officer announced. Kyung studied the star charts. Beyond this point lay Ravager territory. Dozens of systems they had consumed. Worlds stripped of all life. And somewhere in that darkness, the swarm heart. The central intelligence that coordinated the entire hive mind. Begin the operation, Kyung ordered. And may whatever gods are listening have mercy on us all. The armada jumped into the unknown. They emerged in a graveyard. The first system they entered had once been home to a civilization. Cities still stood on the dead planet below, empty monuments to extinct people. The atmosphere had been stripped away. The oceans had been consumed. Everything organic was gone. Scan for Ravager presence, Kyung ordered. Nothing on sensors, her officer reported. The system is completely dead. They found the same thing in the next system. And the next. World after world, stripped and abandoned. The Ravagers had taken everything and moved on, leaving only silence behind. Corporal Eziel walked through the ruins of a city on the fifth dead world. Her medical unit had been tasked with searching for survivors. They found none. Just empty buildings and dusty streets where billions had once lived. This is what we're fighting against, she said to her squad. This is what happens if we fail. One of her soldiers picked up a child's toy from the rubble. A simple thing, worn from use. Evidence of a life that had been lived and lost. We won't fail, the soldier said quietly. Commander. Wu worked in the intelligence center aboard the Absolute Zero. His team had been monitoring Ravager communication frequencies since the war began. The hive mind used quantum entangled particles to coordinate across vast distances. It was sophisticated. Nearly unbreakable. Wu had spent 3 months analyzing the patterns. He found the rhythm of their communications, the way information flowed from the periphery to the center. And he found the center itself. I have it, he announced. The Swarm Heart's location. Kyung came to his station immediately. Show me. Wu pulled up the coordinates. Deep in Ravager territory, 30 systems from their current position. A massive planet orbiting a dying star. That's their nexus, Wu said. Every communication path leads there. If we destroy it, the entire swarm loses coordination. How well defended? I'm detecting thousands of bioships. Maybe tens of thousands. The Swarm Heart has pulled back most of its forces to protect itself. Kyung studied the data. The numbers were impossible. Even with 200 ships, they were vastly outnumbered. A rational commander would turn back. Gather more forces. Wait for a better opportunity. Kyung had not survived 50 years of warfare by being rational. Plot a course, she ordered. We're going straight for it. The Armada fought its way through 23 systems. Each one was defended. Each battle cost them ships and lives. Qiang pursued a strategy of total warfare. If a Ravager breeding world could not be captured, it was sterilized from orbit. Entire planets were scorched. Billions of organisms burned. Observer Kellex watched from his neutral ship and documented everything. He was a journalist from a peaceful species, assigned to record the human war effort for the Galactic Archives. What he saw shook him to his core. "They fight without mercy," he recorded in his daily log. "The humans show no hesitation. No doubt. They have decided the Ravagers must be extinct, and they pursue this goal with terrible efficiency." He watched human Marines fighting in a Ravager breeding pit. The environment was toxic, acidic. The temperature fluctuated from freezing to boiling. The Marines advanced through it all, their weapons cutting down every organism they encountered. "They are not saviors," Kellex recorded. "They are an extinction event with starships." But he also saw Corporal Isail and her medical team working around the clock. He saw them saving lives in conditions that would kill most doctors. He saw them crying over the soldiers they couldn't save. He saw their humanity alongside their capacity for violence. "They are monsters and angels both," he added to his log. "And I do not know which frightens me more." The Swarmheart felt the humans approaching. It had pulled back 70% of its forces to defend the Nexus world. Mathematical probability suggested the humans would either retreat or be destroyed. The Swarmheart had never been wrong, but it made a decision that no hive mind had ever made before. It tried to negotiate. The communication reached every human ship simultaneously. The Swarmheart's voice was vast, ancient, cold as the void between stars. "Cease your advance. We offer tribute, territory, resources. We will withdraw from all Concord space. We will not return in your lifetime." On the absolute zero, Qiang read the message. Her officers waited for her response. "They're offering peace," her tactical officer said. "We can end this without more casualties." Qiang thought about the dead worlds they had passed, the empty cities, the billions consumed. She thought about the toy that Isiel's soldier had found in the ruins. "Send a response," Qiang said. "Tell the Swarmheart that extinction is the only acceptable outcome." The officer stared at her. "Sir, that's genocide." "Yes," Qiang agreed. "It is. But the Ravagers have consumed 1,000 civilizations. They've killed trillions. And they're offering to stop only because we're winning. If we let them survive, they'll recover, adapt, come back stronger. How many more worlds will die while we show mercy to a plague?" She looked at her crew. Young faces, old faces, all of them exhausted from months of combat. "I'm not asking you to agree with this decision," Qiang said. "I'm not even sure I agree with it. But I'm giving the order anyway. We end the swarm. Completely. Forever." The message was sent. The Swarmheart received it and understood. The humans were not like other species. They did not negotiate with existential threats. They eliminated them. The final approach began. The human armada entered the Nexus system to find it filled with Ravager ships. Thousands upon thousands of bioships, all defending the massive planet where the Swarmheart resided. The odds were 20-1 against the humans. "All ships to battle stations," Qiang broadcast. "Today, we end this war. We end it the only way we know how." With fury, the two fleets collided in the largest space battle in galactic history. The void lit up with weapons fire. Ships died by the dozens, hundreds. The space around the Nexus world became a graveyard of metal and organic matter. Captain Hana commanded the heavy cruiser Righteous from its bridge. Her ship had survived every battle since Theshanine. Today would be different. A Ravager bioship, twice the size of her vessel, rammed them. The impact tore through the hull. Alarms screamed. Fires erupted across multiple decks. Hull breach on levels 4 through 7. Our damage control officer shouted. We're losing pressure. Hannah checked her tactical display. The Swarmheart's planet was just ahead. Close enough to hit with missiles. Close enough to make a difference. Transfer all power to weapons, she ordered. Everything we have left. Fire it all. Her crew stared at her. Sir, if we do that, we won't have power for life support. The ship will be dead in space. Then we better make the shots count, Hannah said. Fire. The Righteous unleashed its entire weapons inventory. Every missile. Every railgun round. Every energy weapon capacitor. The ship went dark as power failed, but its weapons found their marks. Explosions rippled across the Ravager defensive lines. Other ships followed Hannah's example. Damaged vessels used their last power for one final attack. Crippled destroyers rammed bioships. Fighter pilots whose craft were too damaged to escape targeted critical. Ravager structures. Kyung watched her fleet dying and felt nothing but pride. All remaining ships, push forward. Break through to the surface. Lieutenant Borum led his Marines in a combat drop directly onto the Nexus world. Their pods punched through the atmosphere at terminal velocity, protected by ablative heat shields that glowed white-hot. The Ravager defenses fired at them. Hundreds of pods were destroyed. Borum's pod survived. It crashed into the surface of the breeding pit with bone-jarring force. The door blew open and he charged out, his weapon already firing. The Swarmheart's defenders were everywhere. Billions of organisms bred specifically to protect the Central Intelligence. Borum's Marines met them with the same fury they had shown on every battlefield. Push to the central structure. Borum ordered. Don't stop for anything. They fought through hell itself. Marines died. Equipment failed. The odds were impossible. But humans had never cared about odds. They kept pushing forward, kept fighting, kept refusing to give up. And slowly, impossibly, they advanced toward the Swarmheart. The battle for the Nexus world entered its 4th day. The human fleet was broken. Of 200 ships that entered the system, less than 40 remained combat capable. The rest were debris or crippled hulks drifting in orbit. Casualties exceeded 60% across all units. But the Ravagers were dying faster. Admiral Kyung stood on the bridge of the Absolute Zero, which was now a floating wreck. Half the ship was exposed to vacuum. Life support had failed on 6 decks. Her crew worked in emergency suits, breathing recycled air, operating on emergency power. Status report, she ordered. Her tactical officer worked at a cracked display screen. The Swarmheart's defensive perimeter is collapsing. Our ground forces have penetrated the outer breeding pits. But sir, we're down to 18% ammunition. Fuel reserves are critical. Medical supplies are exhausted. Kyung looked at the tactical map. The Swarmheart's central structure was visible now, a massive biological complex that pulsed with alien life. It was the brain of the entire Ravager species. Destroy it, and the swarm would die. But getting to it required one final push. And they had almost nothing left. Send a message to all ships, Kyung said. Whatever you have left, use it now. This is the last battle. On the surface, Captain Hannah crawled through the wreckage of her ship. The Righteous had crashed into the Nexus world after its power failed. Most of her crew was dead. But some had survived, and they still had a mission. Anyone who can walk, follow me, Hannah called out. She pulled herself free from the twisted metal and dropped to the alien soil below Dock 23. Crew members emerged from the wreckage. Engineers, weapons officers, a cook, the ship's doctor. None of them were combat troops, but they were human, and they were still in the fight. Hannah checked her sidearm. Half a magazine remaining. We moved toward the central structure. Stay together. Watch each other's backs. They moved through a landscape of nightmares. The Nexus world's surface was covered in organic matter. Breathing structures the size of buildings. Neural pathways, thick as rivers. The entire planet was one massive organism, and they were walking through its guts. Ravager defenders attacked constantly. Hana's makeshift squad fought them off with whatever weapons they could scavenge. A wrench became a club. A piece of hull plating became a shield. They fought with desperation and fury. One by one, her crew fell. But they took Ravagers with them. Every human life cost the swarm dearly. Lieutenant Borum's Marines reached the central structure first. They had started with 500 soldiers. 32 remained. Borum himself had been wounded 3 times. He kept fighting anyway. Plant the charges, he ordered. Every entrance. Every support structure. I want this thing ready to blow. His demolitions expert worked quickly, placing antimatter charges at critical points. Each charge was small, but together they would create a cascading reaction that would tear the swarm heart apart. A massive Ravager organism emerged from the structure. It was the size of a building, with claws like scythes and armor plating that could stop railgun rounds. The final guardian of the swarm heart. Borum's remaining Marines opened fire. Their weapons barely scratched it. The creature charged, sweeping aside soldiers like toys. Borum watched his people die and felt rage burning in his chest. He activated his suit's emergency power boost. It would give him 30 seconds of enhanced strength and speed. Enough for one last assault. The cost would be severe. The strain would probably kill him. He didn't care. Borum charged the creature head-on. His power gauntlet smashed into its armored hide. Bones broke. His own and the creature's. He climbed its massive body, driving his combat knife into every vulnerable joint he could find. The creature thrashed, trying to throw him off. Borum held on and kept stabbing. Kept fighting. Kept refusing to die. His demolitions expert saw the opportunity. He rushed forward and planted the final charge directly on the creature's underbelly. The antimatter explosive beeped its activation sequence. "Borum, get clear!" the expert shouted. Borum jumped free as the charge detonated. The creature exploded. The blast threw him 50 meters. He landed hard and didn't get up, but the charges were set. In the Absolute Zero's bridge. Commander Wu monitored the Swarm Heart's communications. The ancient intelligence was panicking. It had never felt fear before. Now it understood what its victims had felt. Terror. Desperation. The knowledge that extinction was coming. "It's trying to evacuate," Wu reported. "The Swarm Heart is attempting to transfer its consciousness to remote nodes. Can it succeed?" Kyung asked. "Not if we detonate the charges now. But our ground forces are still inside the structure." Kyung closed her eyes. Another terrible choice. Detonate now and kill the Swarm Heart, but also kill every human soldier in the blast zone. Or wait and risk the Swarm Heart escaping. She thought about all the dead worlds. All the extinct species. All the lives the Ravagers had consumed. "Prepare to detonate," she ordered quietly, before she could give the final command. Hannah's voice came over the communication channel. Weak, strained, but determined. "Admiral, this is Captain Hana. I'm inside the central structure with survivors from the righteous. We can see the Swarm Heart's core. It's right in front of us." Kyung's heart clenched. "Hannah, you need to evacuate. We're about to detonate the charges." "Negative, sir. The antimatter charges won't penetrate deep enough. The Swarm Heart has backup biological shielding. It might survive, but I can place a charge directly on the core. Manual detonation. Guaranteed kill." The words hung in the air. Manual detonation. No escape. A suicide mission. "Hannah, no," Kyung said. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Hana replied. And you know it. We came here to end the swarm, so let's end it. She walked forward with the last antimatter charge. Around her, the few survivors from the righteous provided covering fire. The Swarmheart's core pulsed ahead, a massive biological brain the size of a city block. Hana placed the charge carefully. She armed it with steady hands. 30 seconds until detonation. Captain Hana to all human forces, she broadcast. Clear the blast zone. You have 30 seconds. Orum's demolitions expert grabbed his commander and dragged him toward the extraction point. Other Marines ran. Everyone who could move scattered away from the central structure. Hana stood alone before the Swarmheart's core. She could feel its thoughts pressing against her mind. Ancient, vast, pleading for mercy. You consumed 1,000 civilizations, Hana said quietly. You killed trillions. You showed no mercy. Expect none now. The charge detonated. The explosion tore through the Nexus world like a knife through flesh. The Swarmheart's core vaporized. The shockwave propagated through the planet's biological network, destroying everything connected to it. Every Ravager organism in the system convulsed and died simultaneously. In orbit, the remaining bioships went dead in space. The hive mind was gone. Without the Swarmheart's coordination, the Ravagers were just biological matter. No intelligence. No purpose. No threat. On the absolute zero, Kyung watched the readings confirm the Swarmheart's death. Around the bridge, her surviving crew members stood in silence. It's over, someone whispered. Kyung thought about Hana, about the thousands of soldiers who had died, about the 40 ships that would never return home. Yes, she said quietly. It's over. The war ended. Not with surrender or negotiation. With extinction. The Ravager swarm was gone. Every organism. Every bioship. Every trace of the hive mind that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. The human fleet limped back to Velen space. They left behind hundreds of thousands of dead. 3/4 of their ships destroyed. A cost that would haunt humanity for generations, but they had won. The Velen Concord held a ceremony to honor the human forces. Counselor Velis stood before the assembled delegates and spoke of humanity's sacrifice. Their courage, their determination. But Kyung could see the fear in the aliens' eyes. They were grateful for salvation and terrified of their saviors. The galaxy will never forget what you did, Velis said. You saved us from extinction. We did what was necessary, Kyung replied. Her voice was flat, empty, nothing more. Earth held simultaneous events across the planet. Funerals for the fallen, parades for the survivors. Humanity mourned and celebrated in equal measure, a species comfortable with the duality of grief and pride. Admiral Jiho stood at the memorial wall in Geneva, where the names of every casualty were inscribed. Hundreds of thousands of names. He found Hana's name and placed his hand against the cold stone. You were the best of us, he said quietly. The galactic community offered humanity full membership in the Velen Concord. They offered trade agreements, technology exchanges, an honored place among the civilized species, but they also quietly implemented military restrictions, limits on human fleet sizes, observers on human ships, treaties that bound humanity to defensive warfare only. They had asked Deathworlders for help. They had gotten salvation. And now they wanted to make sure humanity stayed controlled. Commander Day 1 returned to Earth as a hero. The news services wanted interviews. Governments wanted briefings. Everyone wanted to know about the war. He gave one statement and then retired to a quiet farm far from the cities. We came because you called, he said. We stayed because it was right. We won because we're human. That's all there is to say. Years passed. Human colonies spread across the recovered territories. Young Velen,